I hope people had a wonderful Easter and Easter weekend. Whether or not you celebrate, I hope you had a good weekend. Today, this week, we are just moving forward with the things that are we're winding up with. Uh, we do have a couple peer and self critiques that people turned in that I want to watch, and then I want to look at some of the stuff, um, the cocooning elements that people sent. We have some additional color and texture cubes. And we have some additional um, ready-mades that are sent in. And the cocooning, I don't know if people understood what the assignment was. We did talk about it last week. We're going to talk about it again. And I want to show those examples again. Um, what we got with the cocooning assignments is just more of the ready-made, it looks like. Uh, what was absolutely vital for the cocooning is that you completely change the silhouette of the thing that you are wrapping. And one thing that kind of disappoints me too is we talked about the ready-made stuff last week that the photos need to be redone. People didn't redo those. Um, it's going to be difficult to get. I'm going to be grading stuff now, and you're not going to get all the points that you would like because you haven't redone what we talked about. Um, Before the end of the term, one thing that I have noticed that is really good is people are turning in stuff. We have stuff that people forgot about from the beginning of the term that they're turning in, which is really, really good. But it is I one of the reasons that I asked for people to turn stuff in, to submit stuff before our class, is we could talk about it, and then you have an opportunity to rework stuff. And some people do take that opportunity to rework stuff, and I really appreciate that. And others don't, and it's unfortunate because what that means is you don't get all the points that you're working for. So we're going to go through those. We're going to talk about them. But if when we talk about stuff and I mention what needs to change, I really hope that you take that to heart because you will get more points if you listen to what I'm actually saying and then resubmit. I'm not calling anybody out. I'm not telling you you're doing an awful job. All I'm just saying is that in order to meet the parameters and expectations of the assignment, should be made. And that isn't on everything, but one thing that did impress me is that several people went through and reworked their sculptures, their foam sculptures, and got more points doing that, and that is awesome to see. Almost everybody who didn't get a perfect score on the artist annotated bibliography, for example, you went through and you resubmitted stuff and redid stuff, and I think that that is awesome. There's absolutely no reason for everybody who's taking this class not to get an A. Everybody who is in this class can get an A. I have absolutely no problem doing that. But what it does take is you looking at your grade and then go through and reworking it. So I'll have everything again. I'll have everything graded by this weekend, and you can go back and rework whatever you need to get the perfect score or to get a better score. Or and What I would definitely recommend is if this is the first one of the first times you're watching the video, that the videos that come out every week, it's um, a really good thing to watch those because that will help with that week's assignment. And my eyes are a little bit unfocused because I'm looking on um, the attendance score overall for the class so that we can I can see how many people do watch the videos. And what I'm saying is that several people do. Most of the class does. But what is interesting to me is that the people that don't are also the people that are not getting the scores. So I will have everything graded this weekend. And again, if you don't have the points that you want, go back, see what I miss, what I say needs to be done, and work on it. Get those points. There's no reason not to get a perfect score. Uh, People have been doing a good job with that on quizzes. I've noticed that people have retaken quizzes and gotten their points up, and that's really great to see too. So I want to show the videos now of the peer and self-critiques. We're going to watch 2 peer critiques, and I'm going to talk about each one after we're done watching them. And then we're going to watch the 2 self-critiques, and again, I'm going to talk about each one after we see it. One thing that I notice about these that really impresses me is you guys nailed the time right on the head. So perfect. Okay, so here is the first, and this is a self-critique, and we're going to go ahead and watch this.
This piece is a small wire sculpture that resembles a dress or a dress form. It's made entirely out of black wire that is twisted and wrapped together to create the shape. The top part looks like a hanger, which immediately connects it to clothing. And the bottom opens up like a skirt. The color is black, so the focus stays on the lines, the structure, and how the piece is built. The texture feels rough and a little industrial, but at the same time, the piece looks delicate and lightweight. The first thing I notice when I look at it is the center, where the wires are tightly wrapped. It feels like a corset, and it really becomes the focal point of the piece. From there, the wires open up and spread downward, creating movement that reminds me of a flowing skirt. The repetition of the wire lines create a sense of rhythm, and your eye naturally follows those lines from the center down to the bottom. Even though the piece is not perfectly symmetrical, it still feels balanced and stable, which I think makes it more interesting because it feels more organic and less rigid. Using wire as a material really affects how the piece feels. It makes the sculpture open and see-through instead of solid, which gives it a lighter and more airy feeling. You can see through the form, which makes it feel less heavy and more about the outline of the structure of the shape. At the same time, the wire itself is strong, so it creates a contrast between strength and lightweight. The mood feels a little industrial, but because of the material, but also creative and expressive, almost like combining sculpture with fashion design. I also think this piece connects to ideas of construction and process. It feels like the beginning stage of a garment where you focus on the structure before adding fabric or details. It reminds me of how in fashion you build something step by step, starting from base to form. Because of that, it feels unfinished in a good way, like it's showing the process instead of hiding it. Personally, I feel very connected to this piece because of my background in fashion and construction. I naturally think in terms of a structure, form, and how things are built. And this reflects that way of thinking. I like that it doesn't rely on decoration, but instead
The reason I paused it for just a second is I thought my dogs were going crazy outside, and it sounds like um, they're going crazy at the outside. on the outside of wherever this video was filmed. Okay, so sorry about that.
Focuses on the form itself and how it was made. It feels honest and direct. Overall, I do like this piece. I think it's simple but meaningful, and it shows how a basic material like wire can be transformed into something expressive. It also challenged me to think differently about what a garment or a form can be without using fabric. It made me appreciate the process more, not just the final result. And I think that's what makes it successful as a piece of art.
Okay, this this piece right here, this is a self-critique, and the requirement is 3 to 5 minutes. She came in right at 3 minutes 57 seconds. There are a couple things that I like about this, and then a couple of things I really like about this. I think this is an excellent example of the self-critique. One thing that I like about it is that Mabel went through and used each of those four tools of artistic critique. There was some overlap, and we didn't hear, now for I'm describing it, now I'm analyzing it. We didn't hear any of those areas, but it's obvious that Mabel is very aware of the four tools of artistic critique and is able to apply them consistently and with articulation. I thought that was very well done. One thing that does concern me is that um, when this is on display at the Met or the Louvre, if you go up and start handling the piece of art, you're gonna get in serious trouble. But as this is her own work, I don't think that that's very much of an issue right now because she's in complete control. One thing that I really, really like is that this is her own work, but she is able to separate herself completely from it and talk about it as if this is the first time seeing it. That is hard to do. And what impresses me about all of you is you guys are able to consistently do that, separate yourself from the work, and then do the critique. And that you guys are doing an exceptional job on that. So very, very well done. Beautifully done. So we're going to go to the next one. This is self-critique as well. And we're going to go ahead and watch that. So that first one is excellent. And this one, you look at the time, 3:06, perfect. Absolutely perfect time.
The artwork I am critiquing is Cammy's structure with the skin. This piece is made out of skewers and crepe paper, or what seems to be party paper. The skewers are glued together with hot glue to create 7 different pyramids. The large pyramid in the center provides a frame for the other pyramids to jut out from, and it provides an interesting scale in this way. The jutting out pyramids are different sizes. There are 2 small, 2 medium, and 2 larger or longer pyramids. They are all facing different directions and are glued on different planes. The crepe paper is pink and glued to some of the faces of the pyramids to create the skin. The lines created by the pyramids force the eyes up and outwards. By placing the pyramids at outward angles, the artist created a sense of movement and lines to follow. The pyramids look as if they're shooting outward from the center pyramid and off into space. The skin along the structure is balanced, and the pink doesn't overwhelm the structure but supports it. The brightness of the pink with the lightness tan of the skewers goes well together, and one does not distract more than the other. The skin also adds a sense of structure, as if they are walls to encase the skewers, while simultaneously appearing delicate and fragile. This provides sufficient emphasis on the skin in relation to the structure. The piece is more formal rather than conceptual. It doesn't seem to rely upon historical or social commentary, but does seem to draw from video game graphics, perhaps. The lines create so much movement you can imagine how it would look if it was animated. It seems the artist is simply enjoying the shapes and the movements of the pyramids. The structure also seems well thought out. The placement of the pyramids and the skin look random, but by design. They are staggered but remain in balance and proportion to each other. One pyramid does not distract more than the other, but they are all together in a cohesive state. My thoughts and feelings stayed the same throughout my observation. It is a formal artwork that follows the principles of design, captivating shape with the pyramids and the lines to create those shapes. Line with the movement outwards and upwards with how the angles are placed, and balance with both structure and skin as well as color. It looks as if the artist enjoyed creating it and was very intentional with the placements.
Okay, that is another example of an
It is
excellent,
made out of skew.
sorry about that. That is another example of an excellent self-critique. Notice that Cami again took this, separated themselves entirely from the object, talking about it. It does sound kind of clinical, but when you're actually listening to the words, Cami's being incredibly precise describing it. Again, going through each of those four steps, what I didn't really catch her declaring, this is the step I'm working on. And again, that's not a good or a bad thing, but what I do appreciate about it is that it felt like it was flowing smoothly from one tool to the next tool, just building up. And if you notice at the very end, there are some references to some of the things noticed at the beginning with language that allows you to really see or to really understand how the artist is um, expressing why they feel the way that they did. It's you have echoes of language, you have use of previous observations. I think they did a really, really solid job doing this. So again, another stellar example. Okay, so here we're going to do, okay, this is a pure critique that's done, and we're at 348. And here's another pure critique that's done, and we're at 302. So these, I'm sorry, I didn't show you this one. This one shows us at right at 302. Both Cami and Mabel did just really exemplary work on those two self-critiques. So let's see if they are able to maintain the same level of profession. I'm just kidding. They're doing a great job. So we're going to watch these other two, and these again are the peer critiques.
Is the sculpture-based photography project by Alex Chan. This artwork is a small house-like sculpture that has been photographed in different environments. The structure looks handmade, possibly using cardboard or similar materials, and it is decorated with patterned paper, lace on the roof, and detailed window frames. The colors are soft, mainly pink tones with some purple accents and white lace, which gives a very delicate and almost nostalgic feeling. The windows and doors are cut out, allowing you to see inside, which adds depth to the piece. In the close-up view, I noticed the texture of the materials right away. The lace on the roof contrasts with the smooth surface of the walls, and the patterned details at the bottom add more visual interest. The lines created by the windows and doors are very structured and geometric, which gives the piece a sense of order and stability. Looking at how the artists organize the images, there is a strong use of contrast and scale. For example, when the small house is placed in the front of the real door, it emphasizes how small the object is, but also makes it feel like it belongs in a larger world. This creates an interesting relationship between the object and its environment. The use of repetition can be seen in the window shapes and patterns, which helps unify the design. Lighting also plays an important role, especially in the image where the house is lit from behind. And that creates a glowing effect that makes the house feel warm and inviting, almost like it is alive. In contrast, the outdoor images feel more natural and grounded, which adds a variety to the overall presentation. Interpreting the piece, it seems like it could be exploring ideas of home, comfort, or childhood. The small scale and delicate details make it feel personal, almost like a memory or something from the past. The different settings also change how we see the house, showing how context can affect the meaning. Overall, I think this piece is very successful because it combines sculpture with photography in a creative way. The artist not only created the object, but also thought carefully about how to present it. I like the attention to detail and the way the environments add new meaning to the work. If I were to suggest anything, it could be interesting to push the contrast or scale even more. But overall, it is a strong and thoughtful piece that clearly communicates its idea. This artwork is
That okay, I think this is another really excellent example of the kind of critique that we're talking about. Really well done, well thought out, going steadily from one tool to the next, and it is very clear. Some of the things that I really appreciate about this is that Mabel is very articulate and very precise, talking about the specific things that they're responding to, the specific things that they notice, the things like textures and things like that. And I really appreciate that. This is one of those things where um, when you guys are doing the peer and self critiques, I like that because it every single time it helps me to see new things that I can appreciate in the imagery. So another excellent example. Okay, and this is a peer critique. It looks like it is going to be an image of one of the houses as well.
The artwork I am critiquing is Trey's. It is a sculpture-based photography house that he built. The piece appears to be a realistic version of a little cabin made of cardboard, sticks, and leaves. The predominant colors in the photo are red, brown, tan, and grayish purple for the leaf roof. There are a lot of horizontal lines with the use of the twigs and diagonal lines with the use of the leaves on the ground. The first thing I notice when I look at this piece are the glowing red windows. It gives a feeling of eeriness and like there's something happening inside that shouldn't be. The red light on the inside of the house creates a strong emphasis and focal point on the piece. The leafy roof provides a good contrasting texture in combination with the twigs. The leaves look soft but structured, while the twigs look hard and stable. The way the leaves are placed creates lines flowing downward, while the twigs create strong horizontal lines. The horizontal lines provide a feeling of stability, while the diagonal lines create a feeling of movement and change. The choice of materials affects the overall feeling of the piece by implying that it is in fact a cabin and would be at home in the woods somewhere. If the sticks were replaced with tiles, it would create a very different feeling and would be out of place. The overarching feeling of the piece is uneasiness and a bit of horror. It relies upon Hollywood depictions of the scary cabin in the woods you see in horror movies. The artist is creating a sense of mystery and danger with the use of the internal red light and the darkness surrounding the piece. There is also an interesting contrast with the blanket as the ground. The texture of the ties create repetition with the flowing of the leafy roof. It's as if the ties reflect the forest ground and the litter with the leaves and twigs you would see in the forest. I feel that the work and the way it is portrayed in the photo is successful in creating a sense of unease. It clearly communicates the idea of danger. The color, texture, and overall structure clearly communicates a cabin-like structure that should be placed in the woods and where scary things are happening. It creates the sense that it should be avoided, but it also creates a tug in the mystery with the light. It reminds me of the Hansel and Gretel fairy tale you read as a child.
This is another really excellent example. A couple of things that I really appreciate is Cami is incredibly precise, talking about all the different textures, and then going through and discussing what each of the textures mean potentially, talking about the different associations that they have with like how the color of the windows look, what this feels like. They're referencing a couple of the other photos of this object, but I think they do an excellent job just walking through how each element can be interpreted, for example, and then describing what it means overall. So I think another really excellent um, critique. So nicely done, very nicely done. I'm really appreciating this. I think that um, these are looking really good. We have another about dozen of these for people to do. So get them done as rapidly as you possibly can, because that they need to be done in the next couple weeks. As we get closer to the end of the term, some of the things that I need people to consider are, um, I'm sorry, one of the things that I need to talk about is the final. And the final that we're going to be doing is uh, going to be me opening up several different questions that people have, or me providing opportunities for people to answer questions. And I will open those in the first day of finals, and then you'll have the whole week of finals to do your final test, and send it back to me. It's actually four different questions where you just talk about your experience doing different projects in the class. And that's all it is. It's not something that you have to study for. It's not something you have to go to the library for or reference your textbook. The textbooks are for your quizzes and to help you with everything else. There you'll notice also, and I'm gonna share this. I'm gonna do a screen share really quick here. Okay, I said really quick. I'm trying to get this taken care of. Hold on a sec. Okay, this should be it. We shall see. All right, here's the modules that we have. And we go all the way down here. the things that we're working on, we talked about paper mache. People have been working on that, get that done. Contemporary processes, we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to look at a couple of the cubes today, texture and light. And this sculpture revisit. This is, we're going to talk about this as well. And I'm thinking I'll talk about this first before I talk about the other things. And then when I'm talking about uh, the final, this is this last little module thing. Everybody does the artist research or service learning reflection and opinion paper, where you just talk about your experience. If you did service learning, you talk about your opinions on your artist. Several people have been turning those in, and they're looking really good. The work log is just the work log for this. You know, you get that taken care of. And then the final, it will open on April 24th, and you'll have the week of finals to do it. I'm going to publish this right here and publish this so that you guys can look at it and ask questions about it. We open this up in the final. The class does require a final. And I'm going to, let's see, today's the 8th. I'm sorry, I'm going to change the read by date. There you go. But I want you to read through this. It's going to be open on the first day of finals, and everybody will have access to it for the entire period of the finals. And there's also an SRI, which is the, how did I do in the class kind of thing, where you get to rate the class itself. One thing that I have noticed is that the people that are active in the class always rate this higher than the people that don't work hard in the class at all, which is really kind of interesting to me. And the school takes that into account, which is always nice. Because I had a student before who bragged how quickly they went through every assignment, even though the time is a factor. They were bragging that a 10-hour assignment only took them an hour and a half. And for some reason, they got upset that the grades weren't very high because that was part of the grade. And their assessment and the student SRI was not very high. This doesn't surprise me. But if you do the SRI, you do not get any points for it itself. The link should show up on your Canvas interface, but you also will have emails that came out that are coming out this month to take the SRI for each of the classes that you take. It's a rating and review uh, um, assessment that you give for the class. If you do that, I do not see that with your name attached to it. But what you will have is an opportunity to tell me that you took it, and then you do a screenshot or send me the receipt for taking it, whatever it is. And just do a screenshot on the last page showing that you took it, and that's what you submit for this assignment. And that's it. And it's you submit just a file upload of that image of the screenshot. Once you do that, you do not get any points, but I notice that you take it and then I add 2% to your final overall grade. So if you're at 91%, which is an A minus, and you do this, you get 2%, which brings you to a 93%, which means you have an A. So it's almost a half letter grade boost. And what I have found is all the students that take this are earning a better grade anyway. And it just helps it helps a bit. And it's not because of anything other than if you're the kind of student that is doing your assignments on, trying to get everything done at the end of the semester on time, you're also probably going to be the type of person that takes these SRIs. So you're already a hard worker. But it is that is a 2%, almost a half letter grade boost. And then the final This is the online final. There's going to be 4 questions, each of them 75 words. And what's important about that online final, and notice it's not published yet, I will publish it again midnight on the first day of finals, and you'll have the whole finals week to do it. What is important about this online final is that you take it. If you don't take it, the department has told me to take off a full letter grade. So make sure that you take it. What that means is when it opens up, is do everything you possibly can as soon as you can to take care of it because and this the 24th is the last day of finals. So you guys um, need to do that before then. But I would say take it on the first day that it opens, because then if there's anything that's missing, if the word count is off or anything like that, you have a few days to retake it. So do it as soon as you possibly can, but make sure that you do it. So read these, go through, make sure that everything's taken care of. So we just have a little bit more time in the end of before the end of the semester. We just have a week or two. We just have like 2 weeks. But one thing that I want you to recognize is that you can resubmit any of your assignments and submit any of your assignments up to midnight on April 24th, the last day of finals. If you need more time than that, let me know. But I want everybody to get their stuff in. You have that much time to do it. There is no assignment that is locked off that you can't resubmit. If you have a hard time resubmitting anything, let me know and I will open it up so you can resubmit it if you need to. There is no assignment that is locked off that you can't submit to. If you haven't submitted yet, take care of it and make the submission. I want you guys to get the best grade you possibly can, and you have until the last second of the last day of finals to do it. And if you need a couple more days past that, let me know, and I will do whatever I can to help out. Now, I'm going to open up a previous class so you guys can see what people have done for the that final. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time finding a previous class, but I for the final project that is the sculpture class. So I'm just trying to find that right now. I think last year we had some really good ones, and that's what I'm trying to find one of the semesters from last year or one of the sections from last year. So you can see what other people submitted for this. All right, this is looking good, or it's looking promising. All right, here we go. And I will tell you about what people got on some of these. But what we're talking about is the revisiting that sculpture with your awareness of uh, texture and color. So this is the foam piece, and you can any of the sculptures that you turned in, the house, the wire, whatever. If you want to take those things apart and use them on the application of texture and things like that, that is great. Go ahead and do that. But look at this, the application of color, go wild and fantastic, drawing from everything you learned about color from Module 5. Application of texture, add layers and layers of fantastic texture as you learn from Module 5. And evidence of time expended. This needs to look like you actually put energy and thought into it. The worst example is, and I think I told people about it last week, is somebody actually uh, took their sculpture, spray painted it, and with one color, and then draped 8 pieces of masking tape over it. So they masking tape was hanging down. Absolutely terrible. It was not very well done. Okay, now this is an example of one of these where they took their original sculpture, and you can tell they did the paper mache and painting. But this is one that I think they could have done more. It's just has two textures. You have the smooth sculpture, and then they look like those heat beads that were done. And the color, there's not an awful lot of consistency to the color. This is kind of the discordant color, and that's fine. That is a perfectly acceptable color scheme. But I think some of the things that would have made this a lot more interesting, and again, this is from a previous semester, it's not from you guys, it's from a previous semester. One thing that could have made it more interesting is doing something other than a flat paint. And even then, there are sponges that you can get at the craft store, like Hobby Lobby, where if you, if for example, this person painted everything black, they could have taken two different shades of gray, used the sponges, and then applied the paint with the sponges to get some really interesting texture on that, and then applied these beads. But again, this is just the smooth texture and the bead texture. This would have been really interesting to do something where, yeah, maybe apply beads for the several rows with different colors. Maybe this one you have the quilt pins that you put in, mimicking that same kind of thing, but you have colored stripes with quilt pins. And maybe the next one is beads, and then you cycle through different textures like that. That might be interesting. Or even doing patches of different texture. So that's something to think about. Now I'm switching what I'm sharing screen wise because I'm going to go to the next one. I'm trying to do this so you don't see the person's names. Okay, here we go. We're going to look at this one. This, I think, is an interesting one. It has some really interesting ideas. They use the wrap type of thing, but I don't know if you can tell they didn't put a lot of effort into carving of the sculpture. It looks just almost like that original block. And I do like, and you can see that they used newspaper to do the paper mache, but didn't really paint it that much, which by itself is not that bad of a thing. I think it's interesting that they used a lot of straws and they used that clear plastic wrap, but I'm not really happy with. Um, it doesn't really show me that they understand or enjoy using texture at all. It's just one texture and and plastic wrap. So, both of those examples are not the very best of examples for this kind of thing. So I'm going to try to find one where the person really knocked it out of the park, and we'll talk about that. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this so that we can, there we go. All right. All right, looking at this, I'm pretty happy. I'm happy with this one. This is looking pretty good. And I'll tell you a couple reasons why. One is they really did a lot of painting. They did a lot of painting with gold. It's a very clear that it's a complementary color scheme that they used, but not the traditional way of approaching it. I mean, you have it's almost complementary, I should say. Pretty close. You have gold, and you have this kind of amber, and then you have this dark blue. And notice that they used some stuff from their wire sculpture and they spray painted it, that contrasting color, and then put that in. And I think this is really interesting because they've taken that sculpture and they've used several different kinds of texture on it, and they've applied some of the wire that they had done earlier in the class as well. But I think that this is really interesting, and I hope that you kind of see the difference. This person actually, that one that I was showing you, they actually did that several different times. And the first couple times they did it, it didn't show a lot of work in that kind of sculpture. Or sorry, they didn't show an awful lot of work using color and texture. So I'm trying to find a couple other of the A students and show what that looks like. And I'm just looking them up right now. At the end of the semester, several people had some really great ideas, but didn't follow through. And I want to show you a couple of the really good ones. Okay, here's another really good one. So the carving itself is right in here, but you can see how they applied several different colors of paint, but they applied it in such a way that we see this kind of textural quality, visual texture to the paint as well. And they adapted their structure and skin sculpture and applied that. They kind of tore it apart and used different elements of it to give this really interesting texture on there, and even applied some paint to kind of put it together. And you can see some of the skin right here and up here. And then look at some of the other textures that they use. Like here's some looks like almost netting kind of thing that they painted independently and put on. I just it makes it so that it's much more interesting than just the organic carving. And I thought this is another pretty good example of the kind of work that people are doing. I'm just going to go to another one. And what I'm trying to show you now, of course, are the people that got really good grades. And this is another example from a student that did about, this was maybe the third iteration. So they did it, I graded it, and then they had me grade it again because they reworked it. So I look at how the color it's kind of blue, orange, yellow. So it's almost like a split complementary kind of thing, but we have some purple in there as well. And I'm using several different shades of each of those colors. They do some fun things with the texture, like draping glue over it and then applying um, glitter. And this person, instead of using that block as the base that everybody has, they kind of made their own base by wrapping paper around a board, which I think is really an interesting idea. And they applied some of the texture to the object and then to the base as well, and kind of brought the paint onto the base too. And I think it's kind of interesting. They've done some things like they used yarn as a textural component, but also to kind of tie it to the base. And you see, they didn't cover the whole thing with the same texture. They've used 4 or 5 different textures. They use several different colors, kind of blending it. And I mean, some of this feels like popcorn, some of it feels like beads. Well, because they are beads. I don't think this is popcorn. I think these are actually um, silk flower buds from the Dollar Tree that they just cut off and put on. I think it really becomes much more interesting again than just the carved foam piece. Now this one, I've got to tell you, this one makes me feel a little uncomfortable. They did a great job, but it just makes me feel uncomfortable. It Yayoi Kusama said she likes using polka dots because they make people feel uncomfortable. And you imagine holes. And I just this passage just makes me feel really uncomfortable, but it engages you. And you can see that they used elements from the structure and skin, they use tetrahedrons for the structure and skin, and they use these different kinds of paper, so they put that on. You see that they have little, they cut up several of their skewers for one of the textures, and there's some really interesting textures, and you can see they painted their sculpture, they carved these holes or these little pits into the sculpture. And when they painted the surface black and the inside of the pit's a very bright color and did some really interesting things with the color scheme. These two things kind of feel like they belong together, just like these two really belong together, these two areas. And you can see they have several different textures that they applied. So this is another really good example. And I'm going to find another one. And I do appreciate that this is there. You're going to have some struggles on the last couple weeks of class, and because there are so many things that you have to do, and I appreciate that. But yeah, this is the last hurrah for this class. So here's one. This is not quite at the same level as those others that we looked at, but I think that this is going pretty good. One of the reasons why is you can see that the foam base, they just use 2-inch wide masking tape to stick it down. And you guys have skewers that you can stick it on. So that kind of detracts a little bit. I do like their creative use of paper for this texture and a lot of beadwork and stuff. I don't see any painting because all the color is in the texture. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And there's some really fun stuff going on. Oh, and I believe that that barking you're hearing is my dog. One of them. The other one is she's 15 years old. She's a Chihuahua, and I think that makes her like 90 years old in human equivalent. Okay, I want to show you one where the person did a they're starting to do some really nice stuff with the sculpture, but the way they photographed it was not really well done. And I think you'll see exactly what I'm talking about when I share this with you. So this is really kind of an interesting type of thing. But you can see the sculpture, they didn't follow directions to round it really well. The painting is really interesting. But if we come out a little bit, you can see that the photographing is on pieces of white paper that they tape together instead of an infinity screen. And those things, they're little things, but they do kind of detract from the presentation of your work. Your work, all of you guys are professional artists. All of you guys do a great job. And it is important that you have respect for your own work. Okay. Okay, and so those are good example of things to share with you that I hope you guys kind of appreciate the kinds of things that we're talking about. All right, so what I want to do now is just look at some of the more of the texture cubes that we haven't looked at before, um, and just kind of talk about them a little bit. I think some of them we may have looked at before. But I have an emergency I have to attend to, so I'm going to end the class really quick. And then I'm going to start up again in just a second.